them, or if anybody's there. We are live. Yes, Reggie, good man. It's 1 minute to 1, so we'll be kicking off in just a few minutes. Let me line up some music. Where's my music gone? There it is. Oh, good boy, Tim Haynes. Signals. Yes. Okay. Right. Reggie, good afternoon.
Good morning.
And good morning to you in beautiful sunny Texas, I'm sure.
Yep.
I'm PR Smith. We've got Reggie Johnson all the way from Fort Worth in Texas with us. As always, before we get into our busy Sustack Plans chat club talking about AI innovations and ethics in business and marketing, we start off with a track from a relatively unknown artist. And this is Tim Haynes, the founder of Blegay, that's blues and reggae. Absolute genius. So this is his track. It's called Signals, and Signals is particularly relevant today because we'll be talking about signals later on. Isn't that lovely? Tim Haynes and his wonderful band doing a track called Signals, which is relevant today because we're going to talk about signals in the world of advertising and digital advertising and ultimately AI. Signals. We'll be talking about how Facebook use signals to send adverts to particular people depending on their click behavior, but more of that later. We've got a busy session today, Reggie and myself. We're going to talk about something really important that's been triggered by two things really that have just been stunning. One is this book has come out and they've tried to stop it. They tried to stop the print of it. They started to stop the author, Sarah Wynne Williams. They've tried to stop her from doing press interviews, media interviews. Meta have gone after her because she is the whistleblower on what was going on in Facebook for many long years. This is a stunning book. I've not read anything quite like it. I've read shockers in my time, but it's so well written. It's like a drama, it's like a novel. These things couldn't be happening, in the real world, could they? Well, it's a document about the real world. And it's stunning. Now, we're going to talk about this for a few weeks. We'll bring it in. But this triggered a lot of the conversation about today, this book, and the subsequent attempts to stop it from speaking, or from her, the author, from speaking, or the book from being published. But we have it. We've read it. It's a great read, and we'll refer to it. So that was one thing that's triggered this conversation today. The other thing is the wonderful, wonderful journalist that I've been a huge fan of, Carol Cadwalader. Now, she's done two of the most stunning TED Talks I've ever seen. And she just completed one in 2025. She did her first one in 2019. She's still suffering as a result of what she spoke about back in 2019. The Broligarchs came after her and tried to, I believe, I better be careful what I say, but she'll tell you herself when you see her talk. We'll send you the links of it. So between Carol Cadwalader, the Guardian journalist, or the Observer journalist, and this Sarah Wynne Williams book, both of them we've kind of merged together. And we're going to talk about this over the next few weeks because it's really, really important stuff, we believe. So we're going to be talking about how we can stop the Broligarchs controlling us. Now, this is kind of shocking stuff, but it's the truth. So how can we stop the Broligarchs? So to begin with, I'm going to ask Reggie to explain what is a Broligarch. After that, I will explain how do Broligarchs actually control us. We'll look at one of the first, what I call identifiers of a Broligarch, and that's data privacy, or collecting data relentlessly. We'll give you a few shock examples. I'm then going to give you some links to videos, and you don't have to listen to us, but later on you can listen to Well, you can listen to Sarah Wynne Williams herself speaking at the Senate Judiciary Committee on the 9th of April. And this is reported by Forbes. So it's not us talking. You'll hear what they're saying about things like privacy, about things like dealing with China when they say they're not, about things about targeting ads at vulnerable kids. This is very powerful stuff, and it's not us talking about it. We're going to refer you to the video so you can go watch it, or you can listen, read the book, or listen to Carol herself, Cadwallader. If we've time, and we probably won't have, I will bring Eric Schmidt into the conversation because he said a few things that are quite interesting that we need to share with you. But we'll finish, as always, with a positive note, and that is on the Fighting Oligarchy tour. We'll tell you about that, and also about protesters in New York. And some UK people flew over for it, protesters marching on Meta at the moment. So there is a fight back occurring, which I am pleased to see. So let's start with the big question: is how can we stop oligarchs controlling us? How can this be done? So, as I said, this has been inspired by Carol Cadwallader and Sarah Wynne Williams, and I suppose it's fair to say, by way of introduction, that big tech companies and their bosses, they've got a lot of power, and some suggest they've got the power to influence and even change our governments, our laws, our democracy, our privacy, our data, our freedom, and even fragment society, polarize opinions, spread hate, enable abuse, and create a controlling cult. And in return for all of this, they take our money, our time, and our data. How can this be? Or an even better question, perhaps, is how can we stop this? So before we get into it, I'm going to ask Reggie, what is a oligarch? We look later on then, how do they control us? And finally, how we stop them. But let's start this with, what exactly is a oligarch, Reggie?
Well, a broligarch is a portmanteau between the word bro and oligarch, contrasted with normal term oligarchy. And what is an oligarchy? It's defined as a small group of people running, having power over a certain situation, often the government. And it's the word has been around since the 2000s, but used in smaller pockets. But really recently applied to the tech bros, as the talk about the tech bros and their specific attitude has come up, and then the combining with political power, both influence but also allying with, as has been reported in many places, allying with the Trump administration. You can see Elon Musk now with a very powerful role in government. The broligarchy takes on a new meaning as talking about governmental power by the billionaires. And the bro part comes in because there's, as is defined by Wikipedia and ChatGPT, there's an element of I think word origins may mention toxic masculinity. Other places mention it's kind of a arrogant culture of the ultra wealthy, and that it involves usually male figures with which have Silicon Valley startup culture, tech optimism, and bro culture with a dose of arrogance or tone deafness. And that is what ChatGPT defines as a tech bro. So it's wherever you look, you can see this term being used more and more, especially in reference to the accumulating centralized power of a small number of billionaires, many of whom are tech startup or big name tech company owners, founders, and having more and more influence over the lives of everyone through their economic power, but also their political influence and now direct political power.
Wow. So a broligarch, the big bro oligarch, big bro from the tech sort of startup kind of culture, and the oligarchy. Well, an oligarchy, as defined by Alexa, is a form of government in which all power is vested in a few persons. There's my ALEXA kicking off because I mentioned her name. But so it's a form of government in which all power is vested in a few persons or in a dominant class or clique.
Would you have considered the nobility and like back in the days in the Victorian era when the nobility kind of ruled everything? Would that have been considered an oligarchy?
Well, I'm guessing yes. I'm not a historical expert, but I'm guessing if the power is in the hands of the few and there's no democratic parliament, I mean, the Victorian times there was a democratic parliament, so maybe it wouldn't have been quite an oligarch thing. But where you've got some kind of radical leader who's just running a country without paying diligence to the body politic or the committees or councils that are around them, that would be an oligarch. So it's where power is vested in a few persons or in a dominant class or clique. And I think clique is a powerful word. The last thing ALEXA says is an oligarch is government by the few. And that says it all. Just a few people running the show. So you can guess who we're talking about here. The masculine energy, Reggie, that you mentioned, or masculinity that's crept into this. Now, Carol actually says this quite specifically, Carol Cadwallader, in her TED Talk 25. And we'll put the link on the notes. And we'll post everything up there so that you can access this stuff. But she actually says it is a male thing, this, without doubt. Now, I know there might be one or two exceptions, but by and large, it's guys. And the masculine energy, I'm going to give you a quote now that I came across, and this is from Mark Zuckerberg, okay? And it's a review of the book Careless People, this book we've been talking about, that was done by another journalist, Poole, Poole, S. Poole, Poole.
Stephen Poole, right? Stephen Poole?
Thank you. Yeah, he actually said that Stephen Poole said when he highlighted Meta's CEO, this is the quote from him now. He says, Zuckerberg's recent appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast, he complains that corporate culture has become too neutered and needs a new injection of masculine energy. I'll repeat that because I think it's quite profound that somebody with that much power and influence should say this. So that corporate culture has become too neutered and needs a new injection of masculine energy. That says it all in terms of this masculinity and misogyny thing, maybe that's going on. Certainly what happens in this book is shocking. But back to the TED Talk, with Carol, she says it's a man thing. Certainly the misogyny in this thing is shocking, but there's other forms of it as well. But there it is. The man himself is saying it. Zuckerberg is actually saying, and I'll repeat it for the last time, like the corporate culture has become too neutered and needs a new injection of masculine energy. Boy, oh boy, is that clear. So yes, that would fit the definition that you mentioned there, Reggie, this masculine line thing. But however, so that's what is a bodyguard. Thanks for that, Reggie. But how do the oligarchs control us? How do they actually control? I mean, is this all just myth? Or am I just being paranoid? Am I just being a wimp and go, oh, I'm scared of big business? So what are we talking about here? Do the oligarchs control us, or how do they control us? So this is what I've gathered from my kind of research over time and listening to both Sarah Wynne Williams reading her book and listening to Carol Cadwallader. It's been suggested that oligarchs relentlessly collect data. They steal data. They destroy privacy, destroy information and truth. They stop whistleblowers. They increase fear. They create a cult that lobbies for deregulation, reducing safety checks, exploiting vulnerable teenagers, allowing hate speech, manipulating elections, and damaging democracy as long as it makes a lot of money. That this is the antithesis of stakeholder capitalism. That's stakeholder capitalism. We talked about this before, where it's not, businesses aren't run just for the shareholders like they used to be back in the 20th century. So stakeholder capitalism is more about, who's got an investment in the business. Well, staff have, customers have, shareholders have, communities have, investors have. There's lots of people, more than just one particular public body. So stakeholders embraces everybody. And we've talked about this before, and there's a very simple formula that I've come across, which does stand the test of time, which is this: if you've got happy customers, sorry, if you've got happy employees, happy staff, you will tend to have happy customers. And if you have happy customers, you will tend to have happy shareholders. You know, if your customers are happy, they're going to be repeat purchasing from you, and that's where the real profits are, in repeat purchases, not winning over new customers. So that's a very simple model, and so you just kind of start with staff, happy customers, and happy shareholders, and that's kind of a form of stakeholder. But this says no, 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 no. It's happy investors is more important. Is what we're moving back towards. It seems we're not going backwards. It seems over the last while. So the oligarchs.
Well,
Um,
one thing, Paul,
yeah,
can I just throw in
yeah,
is it even was stakeholder capitalism was going even beyond that to say happy communities that you invest in. If you have a happy community, your brand is viewed as a trusted partner in the community, not just there to profit off the community members. So happy community
yes.
equals happy employees equals happy. I mean, it's a win-win situation
Yeah.
when you take it to its full extreme. So yes, going backwards is very disturbing in my view.
It is, and it seems to be unfolding in front of us. So, anyways, how do the oligarchs control us? Well, there's a long list, but we'll look at the first. I'm going to call them identifiers. You know, if somebody's stealing data or collecting it relentlessly, or destroying privacy, or you know, increasing fear, or lobbying for deregulation, etc., 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 allowing hate speech. Any of these are, for me, identifying them as possible oligarchs. So let's look at the first identifier that we listed there, which is relentlessly collecting data. Now, just before I'm going to ask you, Reggie, to help us understand what that's about, I'm going to give you a quote from Carol, actually, on our TED Talk 2025. Carol Cadwallader, and she said that data is the well, no, this comes from the Economist originally. Data is the world's most valuable resource. That's the Economist. You know, and the Economist has quoted that, you know, the most valuable resource in the world used to be oil, but now it's data, without a doubt. Front page of the Economist. I took a photograph of it and kept it back in 2017 because I thought, wow, that's so profound and so crystal clear. It's very useful. But data is also what Carol calls data is also a oligarch's crack cocaine. Now, she said that in her amazing TED Talk 2025. So that's what it is. It's the juice that kind of stimulates and gets these guys working faster, greater, more powerful, taking everything out in their paths, and so on and so forth. So today, tech companies here's one for you. The tech companies gather an awful lot of data. We know that. Did you know, and I think we've talked about this before, so probably do know, Reggie, but anybody else listening to this, did you know that Uber cars record your conversations? Mm,
I
yeah.
didn't know that. I didn't know
Uh-huh.
that.
Uh-huh. So next time you're in an Uber, ask the driver, he or she, are you recording this conversation? And they'll probably say no, I am not. And you say, well, hang on, there should be a sign somewhere in this car telling me that you are recording it, because they do record it. Now, the driver doesn't get access to this data. It's actually, they say it's primarily collected, so that if there's an insurance issue, if there's a punch up in the car, somebody jumps out, it's all recorded if it goes to a court case. Equally, the cameras outside the car and inside the car are capturing data. If there was a situation, if there's a crash or a collision or an accident, they've got evidence to say whatever they want to say. But the truth of it is, yes, you are being recorded. So what's your behavior, Reggie, when you're in the back of a, you got to behave yourself. So Uber cars, yes, they do. And if you ask them, they should point you to a sign that says, we do record this for insurance purposes or whatever else. But, data is being gathered everywhere you go. In fact, maybe at the end I'll mention something I've just come across today, but I want to hand it over to you. So the first of the many identifiers, we'll have to continue this next week because there's so much meat in what we're talking about here. But we're just going to look at the first identifier of a oligarch, and that's relentlessly collecting data. Reggie, can you help us out with that?
Yes. So, Paul, you wrote an article on Facebook data, how it was used by Cambridge Analytica in reference to the 2016 US election and the Brexit campaign. That was Great Britain exiting the European Union.
Mm.
And Cambridge Analytica had worked with Facebook to, you could say, improperly gather data on individual users without their permission to create personality profiles so that they could send targeted incorrect messages. You could That's maybe a charitable word, incorrect messages towards people that focused and took advantage of their specific fears and concerns. And this was something Carol Cadwalader also talked about in her 2019 TED talk. And the thing is that
Sorry, Reggie. She referred to these ads as lies, just
y-
plain lies. Factually incorrect stuff.
and
Like,
the
yeah,
Sorry, go ahead. Like the fact that Turkey was joining the European Union,
exactly.
even though they were not, but this was used to scare people in Great Britain into thinking that the European Union wasn't a safe place for them, and it was incorrect, but it got Great Britain out of there. And in the same way, there were for Trump as well. And I think that it's very possible that we'll see. I can't imagine that if that was used in 2016, it wasn't also similarly used in 2024. But in the same way, they can access our private thoughts, you could say, and our unconscious desires because of the way that they understand us. And Paul will say something about this in a minute about how many likes it takes for them to know you better than your work colleagues and parents and your spouse. But here's the interesting thing. So data really is power when it comes to that level of knowing somebody and what makes them tick and how to manipulate them. So no one understands this better than the Chinese Communist Party. And what Sarah Wynne Williams said in her book was she was surprised to read an internal memo that Facebook will agree to grant the Chinese government access to Chinese users' data on Facebook and Meta, including Hong Kongese users' data. And a little bit of a surprise for her, but it's data is power. And I believe you have some more on this data aspect of things, Paul.
Yeah, the we're gonna give you a link to a YouTube video. It's 4 or 5 minutes long, of actually Sarah Wynne Williams testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee on the 9th of April, um, after the book was released. And this is reported by Forbes. So it's not us, it's Forbes, a well respected sort of news source and so on, with a video clip of the question that she's asked about um, China and also collecting data. I think she's asked directly at one stage, they the Judiciary Committee asked Meta, are they working in China? Are they selling stuff into China? And they're told no, we don't have, not working with China, we don't do business with China, sort of thing. And then the camera turns from the senator to Sarah Wynne Williams, who says, "Is this correct? Do they do business or do they not do business in China?" And Sarah Wynne Williams just looks at the camera and says, "Yes, they do. They do $18.3 billion worth." Now I know those numbers have changed over time, and that goes back a few years, but she's quite blatant about saying, this is not right. What they're saying is not right. These are the facts. Um, so that's one kind of shocking aspect of it. Um, I'd like also to mention to you that data doesn't, you can share data illegally outside the country, and so on and so forth. And obviously, the American economy would not want, or its legislators would not want, American customers' data being given over to Chinese Communist Party. Or, maybe if they weren't doing that, are they giving over their own Chinese people's data, or the Hong Kong people, and so on and so forth. So this is a big issue. And certainly this book suggests that, Zuckerberg and the team bent over backwards, basically buckled over and said, you can have everything. We'll show you how the systems work. We'll show you how to work everything. And then I don't think the deal went through in the end. I'm not sure, but it's kind of shocking when you look at it that way and you say, well, what wouldn't they share? So certainly external data, customer data being shared with other countries seems morally incorrect and legally not right. But there's another form of data that's Carol Cadwalader mentioned. And she said, this is it. She did an article after her TED talk. She did an article, which is quite an interesting article. Um, and we'll put the link to that as well. It was her final article that she's written for The Observer, which is owned by The Guardian. Well, it used to be. They've just sold it off. Um, so this is her reference to saying data can be misused. She says the first thing that Elon Musk did was to send his cyber troops into the US Treasury to get access to the data. And Carol goes on to say, that is not a coincidence. It's a hack. That data is now feeding AIs that are choosing who to sack and who to replace. And then she says, oh, sorry, I mean, eliminate fraud and waste, quote unquote. So this is kind of very real. The power that we've talked about that oligarchs have with data for customers or staff or people on the street. In fact, I've just posted something on my own page, on my own profile, which was called RIP Privacy. And it's a video of a guy walking around, I think it's Amsterdam, and he's got AI powered glasses. And he's like walking up to you, Reggie, and he's saying, hi. And if he can just keep you there for like less than 30 seconds, 10 or 15 seconds. And what he does is he asks for directions. Excuse me, where do I get the bus to go to XYZ? Or should I get the train? Or what would you think? So he's got them just for a minute, long enough for these glasses to absorb the facial imagery, to feed that back into a database, to then tell him this person's name is XYZ, this is where they work, and a bit more. Now, if that doesn't worry you, I don't know what would, but it's actually on video. It's quite interesting to watch how people react to it when he says it. Because when he says, "Oh, excuse me, are you Reggie Johnson?" Your immediate reaction is, "Yeah, I am." That's kind of cool because the most important sound in the world is your own name. And so when he says, are you Reggie Johnson? You're kind of like, yeah, that's me. And maybe I'm famous, or maybe he knows me, or maybe we've met before, or, might be a nice person. Who knows? All those thoughts kind of go through your head. So they're pleasantly surprised. And then they say, well, do I know you from some time back? And he goes, no. I look at my glasses. There's a little lens. And they go, oh, I can see that. So I'm recording you and using your facial variables to determine who you are. That's the power of. But I mean, it could very easily, but I could hit you. Hey, Reggie, are you Reggie Johnson? Do you live in Fort Worth, Texas? And you'd be going, yeah. Saying, oh, you wouldn't remember me, but I bumped into you at a party. I can't remember what it was 10 years ago, and we had a great chat. And I thought you were the nicest guy in the world. Can I come to your house for dinner? Can you put me up for the night? So you wouldn't know what would happen out of that. But are you
Concerning, definitely concerning.
Can I just see your credit card for a second? I just want to look at it. Is it the same as mine? Bang, you've been done. So the other thing I was going to mention, you asked me to mention, is Facebook. Now this is 2019, so almost 10 years ago. Okay, 6 years ago. And I wrote about this back in 2019. Well, I got it from another author, Labowski. And these are all fully referenced. So all these links are available too if you want them. But Facebook knows you, Reggie Johnson, better than your work colleagues. Okay, knows you better. If they can get access and see just 10 of your likes, they'll know quite a bit about you from what you like and don't like. If they can see 150 of your likes and analyze those 150, they'll know you better than your own parents or your family. If they get access to 300 of your activities, if you like, if they can analyze 300 of your likes, if they get access to that data, they will know you, Reggie Johnson, better than your own wife. Because what it also does, it can tap into even your unconscious stuff by what you're not clicking on, but is in your stream. There's a lot of data there. What you might have dwelled upon and looked at for a while, or what you might have clicked or liked or shared, and it builds that profile that you mightn't even be conscious of. That you maybe you have a thing about motorbike racing, but you've never talked about it, but you've had this fantasy about it. And if it noticed you were kind of gazed for a period or clicked on, it starts then to build a picture of, even though you've never written about it or said anything about it. They know you like it. So that's pretty crude data. That's been around for some time, and that facilitated some of the ads, very tailored ads that went out at the time,
Yeah.
the first of
They
April.
sell that. They sell
Yeah,
that
yeah,
information. So if I dwell on a motorbike video for a few seconds, repeated a couple different times, they'll sell that to somebody that's trying to sell me products
yeah.
or play on fears if it has to do with something like watching videos about something else like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah, I mean, Sarah Wynne Williams does say this very clearly, and I put a video in there of her responding to the senator in the Judiciary Committee, 9th of April, reported by Forbes, that how Meta ads are targeted at insecure 13 to 17-year-olds. And we've talked about this previously in our chat, that if somebody deleted their own photograph and replaced it with something else, um, that's a signal that's been sent um, to Facebook to say this person might not be happy with their own photograph. This person, therefore, might be vulnerable to an ad about getting lip surgery or something awful. So that does happen. And anyways, you can see those videos yourself. There is just one final thing I want to mention. Is Palantir. Now, we talked about, or we will talk about this more next week, and that is Palantirians. I've written this post, which you commented on, Reggie, and we put a link up to there, which merges both Sarah and Carol's thoughts and other stuff in there. But we talk about Palantirs and Broligarchs, and do they fit the profile? And it seems like certainly whether it's Peter Thiel or the American guy Alex Karp, who breeds upon fear, and we'll talk about this. He welcomes people fearing death, is what he said. We'll give you the exact quote next week. But had a quick look at Palantir because they've got a big contract in the UK with National Health Service and NHS, a £330 million contract. But the medical journal, the British Medical Journal, um, is it BJM or BMJ? We'll clarify it for you next week. They're kind of recommending that this should not be allowed. This data that they're getting access to, because they're a data company, and primarily because they say it's quite controversial that Palantir has signed a deal to increase its advanced technology provision to Israel in support of the war and related missions. And there's people in the UK saying that's just unacceptable. So Alex Karp, meanwhile, the USA's CEO, says he's exceedingly proud of Palantir's involvement in what he calls operational crucial operations in Israel. So we did say before, AI always brings us back to philosophy. You can see the philosophical issues, certainly the political and geopolitical issues. We could go on forever and a day, but we've just gone over our time, and we like to stop bang on the button. We've gone over about 2 minutes, Reggie, so I'm going to apologize to you and everybody else. Do keep in touch. We'll be back next week. We're going to continue this conversation because we've only just looked at one of those identifiers, but we will also mention the good news, because we like to finish with good news. And two bits of good news for you is that there is the Fighting Oligarchy Tour has opened up, and that's appealing to Democrats, Republicans, and Independents. And it's called the Fighting Oligarchy Tour. We'll talk about that, but we put a link to that as well for you. And finally, more good news is protesters marched on Meta offices in New York, and that may happen elsewhere. Not just AI, it's social media, and all sorts of other elements that we've been talking about for years. So it seems like there is some reaction. I think it's good to keep the reaction going. We'll get to the bottom of the 10 tips or tools or ways to not let the Broligarchs take control, and certainly taking action is one of those routes. Okay, recommended by Carol and recommended by the wonderful Sarah Wynne Williams. So we're going to stop there. We'll post everything up, all the links to everything as always. I'm going to finish out with where we started, Tim Hain, with his track called Signals, which was a signal when we talked about Facebook sending messages. Once they detect a signal, like somebody taking their image down, that's a signal they might be open to looking at some information or an ad. So here's Tim Hain and Signals. Reggie, we'll see you next week. Thank you once again for joining us. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. I thoroughly enjoy these chats. So I hope everybody else out there enjoyed it too. So I wish you well. Have a great weekend. And here's Tim Hain with Signals.
Signals keep changing. I don't know which way to move. Yeah, I said your signals keep changing. I don't know which way to move. Is it any wonder? Lost and confused, standing at these crossroads, or watching your signals change from red to green to blue. You called to say you need me, so I race over to your place. Must have got my wires crossed, 'cause when I reach, you leave me no parking space.
We've just posted the link to the topics and the links that we've talked about, so everything's there. And we'll post also a link to this track if people want to listen to it again. So for now, we'll bid you farewell. See you next week. Cheers, Will.